You know you're a successful coach when you ask people about this coach, and the first thing, well, how many state titles has he won? It doesn't seem like anybody in town really knows. It's been so many. It's 31, but what I've got counted up.
That's right, yeah.
As we're taping this.
Yeah.
What do you do with 31 state titles?
I know that part's just crazy. I mean, I think you got to be real fortunate. I've been fortunate all my coaching career, I think, and being here at Aquinas, and then once we do pretty well, and some other people come to school, I think, to play soccer, and it just starts snowballing. Yeah, it's good.
They come online at Aquinas here in '88, and you're hired as an assistant coach from Bishop Miege.
I was head coach 1 year at Miege.
And did you have any sense of what you were getting into here, or was it just a head coaching opportunity? How did you come to St. Thomas Aquinas?
Yeah, I'm not even sure I had any inclination at Miege exactly what I was going to do. I mean, you know, I got this kind of coach high school soccer in the beginning, you know, when it just was coming. You know, like boys soccer was brand new, even, and then girls soccer they didn't even have a state tournament for 5 years after I came here. But a guy named Chuck Jansen was brought up at Bishop Miege about six years before I was the head coach, and they were looking for somebody to be assistant coach in soccer, and you know, so they chose me for some reason. And so I got to start with him there, and then when he went off into the real estate world and became famous there, I got the head coaching job that year, and our president left in the middle of the year for whatever reasons, and the guy Blake Mulvaney, who started Aquinas, was filled in for him for the last 6 months, and so he kind of asked me if I wanted to come start a program, and it sounded good. You know, I was just about the right age to say, okay, let's try it.
You started in '88, and by '92, you'd won your first state championship.
Right.
That's an incredible growth from no program to all of a sudden you're state champions.
Yeah, Blake used to like to tell this story because when he hired me, we had 12 guys that signed up for soccer, and we had a JV varsity schedule. So basically, I called every kid in the school that was a male not doing something and got up to 24. So we were able to play that year. We were terrible, but we played.
Girls soccer begins shortly after that. As you said, there wasn't even a tournament. And
the first tournament was in '93.
And you guys win the first 4 of them, right?
We win the first 4. It was kind of miraculous, yeah.
Did starting the boys program give you the same kind of a jump start for the girls program, that they saw kind of what you were doing and hey, this might be a good time, and
yeah,
we might be good at it?
I've always thought it was an advantage to be able to coach both and to have the programs kind of intermix, like play the same way and run the same dead ball plays, and because the kids will support one another. And it looked like we've been relatively the same success virtually in both programs, so it seems to have worked, you know, that those two interactions, and our coaching staff's pretty consistent, although I have a couple of women in the girls program where I don't in the boys program.
Do you have to coach boys and girls differently?
The soccer stuff, not so much, but relationship stuff, I think, is different whenever you coach boys and girls sports. I've always, like I said, one of the advantages I had was early in life was getting to work at the Kaufman Foundation and go through some team building stuff that was kind of new at the time. Now I think everybody will agree team building is important, and it's really important in female sports, at least I see, the relationships amongst players and coaches and parents. You got to get that right or it doesn't work. And so I would say that's the main difference between men and women's soccer.
You talked about the working with the Kaufman Foundation, and you told me that only lasted for 2 years, the entire program that Mr. Kaufman started, the STAR program. How did you get selected for that, and what did you take away from that?
Oh man, that was one of the luckiest things that ever happened to me. Now the STAR program for grade schools and middle schools had been going for a while, you know, ever since he came up with it in 1980 or whatever, but they hadn't extended it to high schools. And so in 92, I think it was, they started in high schools, and Aquinas was one of the trial schools. And so they had like 22 schools involved, and they watched, and so I got into the program. We followed it the way so they picked me to run it for the next year. So I was selected by a guy named Steve Kuhn and Mike Helmer, and it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, I'd say. And then I think, Mr. Kaufman passed away at the end of my year running when I ran the program, and then I came back to school here. I got to coach too. They let me coach both my teams, and so I didn't teach that year. I was being flown around the country and given classes, and I was able to go out to other schools and instruct. It was just like a great deal for me personally, and I think in the end it helped my teams here at Aquinas, and greatly and still affects them even to this day. So I think that's one of the most influential things that ever happened to me.
Is it any coincidence then that you guys win the national championship in '94, right after you get done with that program?
I think it contributed to it greatly, and probably the guys on the team will tell you that some of those things that we do get from that, there's soccer and there's the parts that make you play better as a team. And I think the Kaufman Foundation, what they did was give me an insight into those things that make you play better as a team. Yes, you got to have good players, but everybody knows teams that look like they should win and then they don't, and that's the other part of the equation I think that has to be solved.
So you get this momentum built on this side of this, if we say Missouri, but this city, Kansas City, was always kind of second fiddle to St. Louis, it seemed, in soccer. St. Louis was where soccer was, and that was where the best soccer was played. How did you fight that and finally become really the dominant force of the two sides of the state and the two cities?
One thing we started doing early in the program, we decided we wanted to make it bigger than just being here. So we would, I think, and some other teams have followed suit, but we wanted to go travel and play people, right? So we would go to St. Louis every year and we'd play the best teams in St. Louis. I mean, in girls soccer, I remember we found out there's this team up in Nebraska. They're not a power anymore, but at the time they'd won like 62 straight games. So we went up there and played them and beat them, all right? So things like that. Go down to St. Louis. We've beaten CBC and SLU and some other of the great powers of the Midwest, but just traveling and winning. And one of the reasons the 2009 team was so successful is we did travel to this national tournament and play in it. And we got to play a team that was like number 6 in the country out of New York. It was a Catholic school in New York. We beat them 2-0. And if those kind of things have to happen, and that helps your program. And so I think travel and just exposing ourselves to things outside the area. And I think that helped the whole area.
You joke about stealing things, but you did. I remember worked a lot of camps, and you went all over the country basically to work soccer and take things that were being used by successful programs and kind of mold them into your own. Does that process ever stop? Do you ever?
I don't think so. I think that's important. And for me, I was at the advantage of I don't think I knew that much. I needed the information. I needed exposure, and so I tried to put myself in as many situations as I could. I was telling the girls just today, there's a guy named Alec Mihailovic who used to design the set pieces for the 1994 Men's World Cup team. He came, Steve Bartel got him out here for 2 or 3 years in a row, and he actually did a camp at Aquinas with me. And he's the one that kind of designed the famous Aquinas corner kick that we've scored so many goals on. Now, we've done some variations of it, but that came straight from him.
There's so many things that pull at kids now, maybe even more so than when you started, and club soccer has gotten so big. And I've heard stories of club coaches saying, don't even think about high school soccer because this is what we're going to do, and this is the road you're going to take if you're going to stay with this program. How do you combat that, and how are you able to keep the soccer talent focused on the high school game and playing for their school?
Yeah, I really think the club and the high school, if they work together, it's a great experience. You think of some of the great soccer players that have come out of Kansas City that did both. Like take Matt Beasler, for example. I mean, he was a star at Blue Valley West. For here, we had Michael Thomas, who's played in the highest level, and we've had Kyle Miller, who played the highest level. We had 2 other guys, Chris Lee and Matt Bluen, also played in the league. And so I think and one of my best examples, I think, is there's a guy named Derek Shore, who has been a very successful club coach, but he works well, I think, with high school coaches. He comes and watches his kids play in high school. He might even compliment them. He goes up and says hi to the coach. I think the more high schools and clubs work together, I think you can have the kid will be better for the kid. The kid needs to hear more than one voice. It's better for them to hear more than one coach and get coached in different ways and have different roles on teams. Like the role a kid may have on his club team will be completely different on a high school team. And it'll change every year because you're going to be the freshman on the team, then you'll be a sophomore, and your role's going to change every year for that. And that's good for people all the rest of their lives.
Not to diminish the early results, but soccer now has got to be much harder at the high school level than when you started the program because, I mean, there's so many more athletes playing soccer and so many more programs. The boys have won 10 titles in 12 years now. The girls, 6 straight, 15 overall. It's got to be harder now to keep winning those state championships than when you started, isn't it?
Right, because there's so much more talent spread out in many more places. So, I would say as soccer, that's what's kind of, who knows exactly how to explain some of those things, but it's harder now. I'd say it's harder because there's just so much talent around. And I just think of the schools in this area that are so good, like Blue Valley Northwest and Blue Valley Southwest. St. Teresa's is, so those are great programs. Like we held this tournament in girls soccer, the MOCAN, and half the field won state this year.
Right.
That is like
It's
remarkable.
incredible, yeah.
That's incredible. That can't happen. Yeah, that was fantastic.
So how are you able to keep this standard of success, though, when the competition is ratcheted up? The competition for kids has got to be at an all-time high for their time and different sports. How are you able to sustain that?
Well, one thing I do think you should have high expectations, and I think that helps you be successful. I think a lot of places people are worried about expectations because you don't want to fail. But I just think in the end, if you expect to do well, you're going to do better. Like that sort of shoot for perfection. You just might get to excellence. I think that's what you got to do. You got to have stuff like that.
I'm sure you'll figure it out. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you.